Today, we continue with the chapter Heedfulness, Appamadavaga, covering verses 21, 22, and 23 of the Dhammapada. These verses were spoken by the Blessed Teacher at the Ghosaka monastery near Kosambi in connection with the death of Lady Sāmāvatī and her 500 attendant nuns, as well as Lady Magantia and her 500 kinswomen. To clearly understand today's account, we shall proceed step by step through the following episodes. Part 1. The Youth of Udena. At one time, King Alakapa ruled the kingdom of Alakapa, and King Vetharipaka ruled the kingdom of Vetharipaka. They had been intimate companions since childhood and had studied under the same teacher. After the passing away of their fathers, they succeeded to the throne and governed realms extending more than 10 leagues. They met frequently, ate from the same dish, and slept upon the same couch, observing that beings are born only to die again. The two kings reflected thus: after death, nothing can be taken along, not even this very body. What benefit is there in the household life? It would be better for us to go forth into homelessness. Therefore, they entrusted their kingdoms to their wives and children and renounced the world, undertaking the life of ascetics in the Himalayan range. Later they reflected: to abandon the throne and live the life of renunciation is not difficult. But if we continue living together, it is not yet true austerity. Thus they dwelt separately on two different mountain peaks. Every fortnight, on the day of confession uposatha, they would meet one another. Though they did not maintain frequent contact, each knew whether the other was alive or had passed away, for each would light a fire upon his mountain so the other might see. After some time, the ascetic Vetharipaka passed away and was reborn as a son of a Brahma, possessed of extraordinary powers. 2 weeks later, when Alakapa did not see the fire lit upon the mountain, he understood that his friend had died. Having just been reborn, Vetharipaka surveyed his celestial realm, reviewed the deeds of his former life and the austerities he had practiced since going forth, and wished to visit his friend. Leaving that heavenly plane, he manifested himself in the form of a wandering ascetic and went to see Alakapa. Having paid homage, he stood respectfully to one side. Alakapa asked, "From where do you come?" "I am a wanderer who has come from afar." "But, venerable sir, do you dwell here alone?" "I have only one friend." "And where is he?" "He dwells upon that mountain." Not seeing the fire lit on the Uposatha day, I knew that he had passed away. "I am that friend." "Venerable sir, where have you been reborn?" "In the heavenly realm, as a son of a Brahma, endowed with great supernormal power. I have returned here to visit you. Do you dwell here in peace, or are you troubled?" "I am greatly vexed by the herd of elephants." "Venerable sir, in what way do they trouble you?" "As soon as I finish sweeping, they come and foul the place with their dung, then trample about and raise clouds of dust, partly gathering their droppings and partly clearing the ground. I become utterly exhausted. Do you wish to drive them away?" "I do." "Very well, I shall help up you." Vetharipaka gave Alakapa a 3-stringed lute and instructed him in 3 incantations by which the elephants could be subdued. "Strike the first string and recite this mantra. The elephants will flee and will not dare even to look at you. Strike the second string and recite this mantra. They will also flee, but at every step they will look back at you. Strike the third string and recite this mantra. The leader of the herd will come running and allow you to mount upon him. Here, use it as you wish." Having spoken thus, Vetharipaka departed. From that time onward, the ascetic dwelt in peace. At that period, the king of Kosambi was Parantapa. One morning, the king was seated in the early sunlight with his chief queen, who was with child. The queen wore the king's crimson robe, valued at 100,000 pieces of money, and while conversing, she removed the royal signet ring from the king's finger, worth 100,000 gold coins, and placed it upon her own hand. At that very moment, a monstrous bird with a beak like an elephant's trunk was circling in the sky. Seeing the queen come, it mistook her for a piece of fresh flesh and, spreading its wings, swooped down. Hearing the rush of the bird's descent, the king sprang up and ran into the palace. But the queen, being with child and slow and frail, could not flee swiftly. The bird plunged down, seized her in its talons, and soared high into the air. It is said that this species of bird possesses the strength of 5 elephants and can carry off its prey to any place it wishes before devouring it. Though terrified, the queen remained mindful. She knew that if she cried out, the bird, frightened by the human voice, would release her at once. Yet that would endanger both herself and the child in her womb. Therefore, she endured patiently, waiting until the bird should alight, intending then to shout loudly so as to frighten it away. As was its habit, the monstrous bird placed the queen upon the forked branch of an ancient banyan tree with a wide-spreading canopy in the Himalayan range, while it kept watch upon the ground below. It is said that such birds customarily keep watch over the path leading to the tree where they perch. Knowing the moment had come, the queen clapped her hands and cried out loudly, driving the bird away. By evening, as storms arose on all sides, she went into labor, overcome with weakness, nearly fainting from the pain. She had no one beside her to comfort her. Throughout the night, she did not sleep. As dawn gradually broke and the clouds dispersed, the child was born. Because he was born amid a storm upon the mountain at sunrise, she gave him the name Udena. Not far from that place was the dwelling of the ascetic Alakapa. On rainy days, the ascetic did not go into the forest to gather fruits, fearing the cold. Instead, he would go to the foot of the banyan tree to collect the leftover bones discarded by the bird, crush them, and boil them to make broth. On that day, Alakapa went to the tree to gather bones. Hearing the sound of a child crying above, he looked up and saw the queen. He asked, "Who is there?" "I am a woman. Why are you up there?" "A monstrous bird carried me here." "Come down." "Venerable sir, I dare not descend for fear of difference in caste." "Of what caste are you?" "Of the warrior caste, Katiya." "I too am of that caste." "Then recite the password of the warrior caste." The ascetic recited it. The queen then consented to his climbing the tree to bring the infant down. In obedience to her command that he was not to touch her, he took the child in his arms and brought him down, placing him upon the ground. While the queen descended by herself, the ascetic led the queen to his hermitage. He tended and served her with honey and prepared broth and gruel from the grain he had cultivated, without transgressing his precepts. As time passed, partly out of fear that the ascetic might abandon her, and partly because she knew neither the way there nor the way back, the queen conceived the intention of seducing him. The ascetic then broke his vow with her, and from that time, the two lived together. One day, while observing the constellations, the ascetic saw that the ruling star of Parantapa, king of Kosambi, had grown dim. He said to the queen, "Lady, the king of Kosambi has passed away." "Venerable sir, why do you say such a thing? Why do you harbor ill will toward the king?" "I bear no ill will. I speak thus because I have seen that his star has faded." The queen burst into tears. The ascetic, astonished, asked, "Why do you weep?" Then the queen revealed that King Parantapa was indeed her husband. The ascetic consoled her. "Do not weep. Whoever is born must also die." "I know that. Then why do you still weep?" "I weep out of sorrow for my son. He ought to have inherited the throne and stood beneath the white parasol of sovereignty. Now he is but a commoner. Do not grieve. If you wish him to become king, I shall devise a way. Alakapa then gave the boy the lute and taught him the incantations for subduing the elephants. On the first day, the boy plucked the first string and recited the first mantra. The herd of elephants that had gathered near the banyan tree fled at once, not daring even to glance back. On the second day, he plucked the second string and recited the second mantra. The elephants fled, but at every step, they turned to look back at him. Before teaching the third mantra, the ascetic instructed the queen to teach the boy the proclamation of royal claim. You must declare that you are the son of King Parantapa of Kosambi, who was carried away by a monstrous bird. Then recite the names of the commander-in-chief and the great generals. If they still do not believe you, show them this robe and this royal signet ring of your father. On the third day, following the ascetic's instructions, the boy sat upon the lowest branch of the banyan tree, plucked the third string, and recited the third mantra. The leader of the elephant herd ran forward and allowed the boy to mount upon him. The boy then whispered into the elephant's ear, I am the son of the king of Kosambi. Carry me to my father's throne. The leader of the elephants immediately trumpeted, 1,000 elephants. Assemble. Thousands of elephants gathered. The elephant trumpeted a second time. Let the old and feeble elephants remain behind. The aged elephants withdrew. The elephant trumpeted a third time. Let the young elephants remain behind. The young elephants withdrew. Thus the boy set forth, surrounded by thousands of mighty elephants. Arriving at a frontier village, he proclaimed, I am the son of the king. Whoever desires prosperity and well-saying, come to me. He then advanced, recruiting additional forces, laid siege to the city, and sent the message, either engage in battle or surrender the throne. The people replied, neither. Our queen was carried away by a monstrous bird while she was with child. We do not know whether she lives or has died. We shall neither wage war nor yield the throne until we receive news of the queen. The boy then said, I am indeed the son of the queen. He recited the name of the commander-in-chief and the names of the great generals. Seeing that the people still did not believe him, he produced the robe and the signet ring. Recognizing them, the people opened the city gates and acclaimed the boy as king. Part 2. The Youth of Ghosaka, a former birth story. Kotuhalaka abandons his child. At one time, in the kingdom of Ajita, a famine arose. A man named Kotuhalaka, unable to find sufficient food, resolved to go to Kosambi to seek a livelihood. Together with his young son Kapi and his wife Kali, he set out, carrying a small supply of provisions. Some say he left because the people there were dying of a cholera epidemic. They journeyed on until their provisions were exhausted. At last, weakened by hunger, they were unable to carry the child any longer. The husband said to his wife, Woman, if we survive, we may have another child. Let us abandon this one and continue on. But a mother's heart is ever compassionate. The wife replied, I will never abandon a living child. Then what are we to do? We shall take turns carrying him. When it was the mother's turn to carry the child, she bore him as though lifting a garland of flowers, holding him close to her breast or supporting him upon her hip. But when it was the father's turn, however he carried the child, he felt only heaviness and distress, more burdensome even than his hunger. He repeatedly said, Woman, if we survive, we shall have another child. Cast this one away. Yet the mother firmly refused. After being passed back and forth for some time, the child grew exhausted and fell asleep in his father's arms. Kotuhalaka then slowed his steps, allowing the mother to walk ahead. Secretly, he laid the child upon a bed of leaves beneath a tree and immediately hurried on. After walking some distance, the mother suddenly turned back, not seeing the child. She asked, Husband, where is my child? I left him beneath a bush. Alas, do not kill me thus. How can I live without him? Give me back my child." Seeing her, beating her breast and weeping bitterly, the husband had to retrace his steps, find the child, and return him to her. It is said that because of this single act of abandoning his child, in a later existence, Kotuhalaka himself was abandoned by his parents 7 times. One should not underestimate evil deeds, thinking it is only a small matter. Continuing their journey, they arrived at the house of a cattle herdsman. On that day, one of his cows had given birth, and the owner prepared a feast in celebration. After making an offering to a Pacheka Buddha who regularly came for alms, he cooked a great quantity of gruel and broth. Seeing the 2 weary travelers and feeling compassion for their condition, he served the husband generous portions of gruel along with much butter and milk. The wife placed liquid butter and milk cakes before her husband, allowing him to eat and drink his fill after many days of hunger, while she herself ate but a little. The husband ate greedily, yet still did not feel satisfied, having fasted for 6 or 7 days prior. Observing that the herdsman, while taking his meal, occasionally gave a few spoonfuls of gruel to a female dog lying beneath his seat, the husband conceived a craving in his mind. He thought how fortunate the dog was to eat delicious food and be fully satisfied. That night, the husband suffered from severe indigestion and passed away, and was reborn in the womb of that female dog. After burying her husband, the wife remained there to work as a hired servant, receiving as wages half a measure of rice. She cooked and set aside a bowl as an offering to the Pacheka Buddha, transferring the merit to her child, reflecting that whether she made offerings or not, she was blessed each day with the privilege of paying homage to and attending upon the Pacheka Buddha, thereby gaining merit and well-being. She resolved to remain there permanently. 6 or 7 months later, the female dog gave birth to a puppy. The master of the house reserved the milk of one cow exclusively for it. Before long, it grew into a strong and healthy dog. Whenever the Pacheka Buddha received alms, he would set aside a portion of gruel for the dog, and thus it remained constantly by his side. Each day, the herdsman would go to visit the Pacheka Buddha, with the dog following behind. On the way, when passing a wild animal's cave, he would strike the bushes with his stick and beat the ground, calling out 3 times, "Su, Su," to frighten the beasts away. One day, he informed the Blessed One that if ever he could not come himself, he would send the dog to fetch him, asking that the Pacheka Buddha understand this as a sign of his invitation. Indeed, a few days later, feeling unwell, he sent the dog to invite the Pacheka Buddha. Obeying his master's command, the dog ran off, passing the cave of wild animals. It barked 3 times before continuing on. Early in the morning, after relieving itself, it approached the hut and barked 3 times in salutation before the Pacheka Buddha, then lay down to one side. Knowing that the time had come, the Pacheka Buddha rose and set out. The dog ran ahead, barking from time to time. On several occasions, the Pacheka Buddha intentionally pretended to take the wrong path to test it, but each time the dog recognized this, stood in the way, barked loudly, and signaled for him to take another route. On one occasion, when the Pacheka Buddha again took the wrong path, the dog blocked his way as before, but this time the Pacheka Buddha did not turn back. Instead, he gently pushed the dog aside with his foot and continued. The dog then seized the inner hem of the Blessed One's robe with its teeth and pulled him back until he followed the correct path. Truly, the dog was loyal and devoted to the Pacheka Buddha. One day, when the robe of the Pacheka Buddha became worn and torn, the herdsman offered cloth for a new robe. The Pacheka Buddha had to go elsewhere to have it sewn. He rose into the air and departed in the direction of Mount Gandhamadana. The dog barked and howled until the Blessed One's form gradually disappeared from sight, and then its heart burst on the spot. It is often said that animals live in simplicity and know not deceit, whereas human beings may harbor one thing in the heart and speak another with the mouth. Thus the Blessed One once instructed a monk, "The mind of man is hard to fathom, but the mind of beasts is simple." Having died, the dog, by reason of its upright and faithful heart, was reborn in the realm of the 33 Tavadimsa, attended by 1,000 celestial maidens enjoying immeasurable bliss. That deva needed only to whisper, and the sound would carry for 16 leagues. When speaking in an ordinary voice, it could be heard throughout the 1,000-league expanse of that heavenly realm. This was the result of the dog's former barking and howling out of loving devotion for the Pacheka Buddha. Before long, however, that deva passed away from the realm of the 33. Devas pass away for 4 reasons: the exhaustion of their lifespan, the exhaustion of their merit, the exhaustion of sustenance, and anger if abundant merit remains. When their lifespan in that realm ends, they are reborn in a higher heaven. This is called the exhaustion of lifespan. If merit is scant, like placing only 1 or 2 measures of rice in a granary, it is soon depleted, and they die. This is called the exhaustion of merit. In the third case, a deva indulges excessively in pleasures, neglects nourishment, declines in strength, and dies. This is called the exhaustion of sustenance. The fourth cause is envy at the radiance of another, leading to anger and death. The present story, the 7 times Ghosaka was abandoned. Ghosaka, who in a former birth had been that dog, after enjoying celestial pleasures in the realm of the 33 and neglecting even to drink, passed away and was reborn as the son of a courtesan in Kosambi. As soon as she gave birth, the courtesan asked her attendant whether the child was male or female. Learning that it was a boy, she ordered that the infant be placed in an old basket and cast upon a heap of refuse. Courtesans rear only daughters, for they inherit their profession. Crows and dogs gathered around, yet through the merit of his former deeds, none harmed the child. At that moment, a passerby noticed the unusual scene. Approaching to look, he saw the infant boy, felt immediate compassion, and took him home to raise. On that same day, the treasurer of Kosambi went to the royal court, where the court priest, skilled in astrology, declared that a boy born that day would become a great and influential treasurer. At that time, the treasurer's own wife was with child and near her time, though she had not yet given birth. The treasurer then summoned a slave woman named Kaki, gave her 1,000 pieces of money, and instructed her to search throughout the city for a boy born that very day and bring him back at once. The slave woman searched everywhere. When she came to the house where the abandoned child had just been taken in, she bargained for the infant, beginning with a single coin and gradually increasing the offer until, for 1,000 pieces of money, she obtained the child and brought him to the treasurer. The treasurer reared the boy in his own house, thinking to himself, "If later my own child is a daughter, I shall make this boy my son-in-law and heir to the office of treasurer. But if it is a son, I shall have this child put to death." A few days later, his wife gave birth to a son. The treasurer then instructed Kaki to take the foster child and place him at the entrance to the cowshed at the hour when the cattle went out to graze, so that they might trample him to death. He further ordered her to watch carefully and not return until she had seen that the child was dead. The slave woman did as she was told. As soon as the door of the cowshed was opened, the leading bull rushed out first, contrary to its usual custom of coming out last. Reaching the spot where the child lay, it spread its 4 legs to shield him and stood motionless there. Hundreds of cattle passed out on either side, brushing close against its flanks. This scene did not escape the notice of the cowherd standing nearby. Approaching, in astonishment, he saw the child lying beneath the bull. Moved with compassion, he took the boy home and raised him. Kaki, having witnessed everything from beginning to end, returned and reported the matter to the treasurer. The treasurer again ordered her to visit the cowherd and offer 1,000 pieces of money to reclaim the child. Next, he commanded Kaki to place the boy in the track of a wagon wheel, knowing that on the following morning, 500 carts would set out on a distant trading journey. If the oxen did not trample him, the wheels would surely crush him. He again instructed her to remain and see how the child died before reporting back. At dawn, the caravan leader came to yoke the oxen and urge them forward, but they broke loose and refused to move. This happened repeatedly until sunrise. Perplexed, the leader glanced down at the road and saw the child lying there. He lifted the boy up, rejoicing at the thought of gaining a son. Kaki, who had been watching, returned and informed the treasurer. The treasurer again sent her to the caravan leader with 1,000 pieces of money to redeem the child. He then ordered her to cast the boy into the bushes at the cremation ground, that birds, beasts, or spirits might devour him. Kaki carried out the command, yet no beast or spirit harmed the child, for the fruit of his former deeds protected him. Soon a flock of goats passed through the cremation ground. A she-goat, wandering into the thicket to graze, saw the child and knelt down, allowing him to suckle. Though the goatherd repeatedly called her, she would not come out. At last he entered with a stick and discovered the child. Delighted, he took the boy home. Even now, the treasurer would not relent. Kaki was again sent to redeem the child from the goatherd. She was instructed to climb Robber's Rock and hurl the boy down the mountainside, where he would strike the cliff and fall into the ravine. Shattered, yet along the slope grew a thick clump of bamboo, and near the summit were many gunja shrubs spreading densely. The child fell directly into the bamboo thicket, as though upon a cushion of goat's wool. On that very day, the leader of a bamboo cutting guild had secured a profitable order. When he and his son raised their blades to cut into the thicket, the swaying bamboo caused the child to cry out. Hearing what sounded like an infant's cry, he hastened to climb up and saw a baby boy. Rejoicing, he carried him home. Once again, Kaki went to redeem the child. From that time forward, the boy survived in good health and grew up. He was named Ghosaka, yet he remained a thorn in the treasurer's side. The treasurer continued to seek ways to kill him. This time he personally went to a friend who was a potter, gave him 1,000 pieces of money in advance, and instructed him as follows: I have an illegitimate son and will send him to you. Put him into a closed room, take a sharp hammer, cut him into pieces, and throw them into the kiln to be burned. Here is 1,000 pieces of money as agreed. When the matter is done, I shall reward you further as is fitting. The potter agreed. Returning home, the treasurer summoned Ghosaka and sent him to the potter. Yesterday, I entrusted the potter with a certain task. Go and tell him to complete the work your father assigned yesterday. Yes, sir. Ghosaka set out. Not far from the house, he met the treasurer's own son, playing marbles with his companions. The boy stopped Ghosaka and asked, Where are you going? I carry a message from father to the potter. Let me go instead. These fellows have taken all my money. You play in my place and win it back for me. I am afraid of father. Do not be afraid. I will explain it to him. I have already lost much money. You keep playing until I return and try to win back what I have lost. Ghosaka was very skillful at marbles, and his foster brother urged him repeatedly. At last Ghosaka agreed. Thus it was the treasurer's own son who delivered the message to the potter. In accordance with the prior arrangement, the potter killed the bearer of the message and cast the body into the kiln. Ghosaka played marbles the entire day and returned home only in the evening. The treasurer, astonished, immediately asked, "You have returned?" Ghosaka then related all that had occurred. The treasurer turned pale, as though drained of blood, and cried out, "Alas, what misery is this?" He hastened at once to the potter, wringing his hands and lamenting, "Potter, you have destroyed me. I am ruined. I am ruined." Seeing the treasurer in such panic, the potter sought to calm him. "Sir, do not raise your voice. The task has been completed." A sorrow, like a mountain, fell upon the treasurer. He was compelled to endure the utmost anguish, as do all who bring harm to the innocent. Therefore, the Blessed One taught, "He who with a rod harms the rodless and injures one who is harmless soon comes to one of 10 states of suffering, or he incurs grievous pain. He may endure intense affliction, bodily injury and loss, or severe illness, or derangement of mind, or misfortune from the king, or a grave accusation, or loss of relatives, or destruction of wealth, or fire may burn his houses, and at the breaking up of the body after death, the foolish one is reborn in hell." The treasurer could not bear even the sight of Ghosaka and continued to seek ways to kill him. This time, he sent the boy with a letter to the steward who managed his 100 villages. In the letter, he instructed the steward to kill the boy and cast him into a pit of excrement. The letter was fastened to the hem of Ghosaka's garment. Ghosaka was illiterate, for from birth to maturity, the treasurer had continually plotted his death, and thus he had never been sent to school. Unaware that the letter bore an order for his own execution, he asked his foster father for provisions for the journey. The cruel man replied that along the way, in such and such a village, there was a friend of his who was also a steward. He should eat there and then continue onward. Arriving at that village, Ghosaka inquired for the steward's house and encountered the steward's wife. Learning that he was the son of her husband's friend, she felt immediate affection for the young man. This steward had a daughter of 15 or 16 years, exceedingly beautiful. To preserve her good name and safety, her parents kept her on the highest level of a 7-storied mansion, splendidly adorned like a royal palace, attended by a maidservant. That day, the young lady sent her maidservant to the market. On the way, the maid met her mistress's mother, who requested that she prepare a seat for Ghosaka, wash his feet, anoint them with oil, and make a bed for him. When the maid returned late from the market, she was reproved by her young mistress and had to relate how she had attended to Ghosaka. At the mere mention of the young man's name, the maiden felt a deep affection for him, penetrating to the marrow of her bones and the core of her heart. She had been the wife of Kotuhalaka in a former existence. By offering alms to the Pacheka Buddha, she had gained the merit to be reborn into the wealthy household of the steward. Thus, the attachment from her previous life was rekindled. The Blessed One has taught, through association in a former life or through benefits in the present, affection springs forth as a lotus rises upon the lake. The maiden eagerly inquired further about the young man, learning that he was asleep with a letter fastened to the hem of his garment. She quietly descended, removed the letter, returned to her chamber, closed the great door, opened the window, and read it. After reading it, she exclaimed, "Alas, what a foolish youth, setting out with his own death warrant tied to his garment. Had I not read this letter first, he would surely have been killed." She tore the letter to pieces and wrote another, imitating the treasurer's hand. "This is Ghosaka, my son. Collect gifts for him from my 100 villages. Prepare his marriage to the daughter of the steward of this district. Build a 2-storied house in the center of the village for the newlyweds, with enclosing walls and proper guards for protection. When the matter is completed, inform me that it has been done accordingly, and I shall reward you generously." Having finished, she fastened the new letter to the hem of the young man's garment. As before, after sleeping the whole day, Ghosaka awoke, took food, regained his strength, and continued on his journey. On the following morning, he arrived at the village where the steward of his foster father's 100 villages resided. After offering greetings, he presented the letter of the treasurer at once. When the steward read the letter, he cried out in delight and immediately ordered his servants to transport timber and other building materials to erect a 2-storied house in the center of the village, exactly as instructed in the letter. He then gathered the gifts from the 100 villages and brought them to the house of the steward nearby to arrange the marriage ceremony. At the same time, he sent word to the treasurer in the city that everything had been carried out according to the instructions. Upon receiving news that a house had been built and a marriage arranged for Ghosaka, the treasurer was struck with astonishment and could only lament inwardly. Man proposes, but destiny disposes, grieving over the death of his own son, and distressed at the collapse of his scheme. His heart burned constantly as if on fire, and he was afflicted with dysentery. Yet he could not extinguish his anger toward Ghosaka. "At any cost, I will not allow this wretch to inherit my wealth." He then instructed his clerk to send a messenger to summon Ghosaka back. The steward's daughter, now Ghosaka's wife, had previously instructed her attendants that whenever anyone came from the treasurer in the city, they were to inform her first before speaking to Ghosaka. Thus, when the clerk's messenger arrived, she intercepted him and inquired carefully. The man candidly explained that the treasurer was not yet gravely ill, was still able to eat somewhat, and that he had been sent to request that Ghosaka visit his ailing father. She did not inform Ghosaka of this. Instead, she ordered that the messenger be given lodging and payment, and told him to remain there until she sent him. When the treasurer waited long, without any word from the messenger, he questioned the clerk and, receiving no news, sent another messenger. She treated him in the same manner. When a third messenger arrived and reported that the treasurer's illness had grown severe, he could no longer eat, lay confined to bed, and had to relieve himself where he lay. She then informed Ghosaka and advised him to bring gifts from the 100 villages to visit his father. But as the gifts were so numerous that loading them all onto carts would cause delay, she told her husband to leave the goods behind and that only the tuku of them should go. She further instructed him, "You stand at your father's feet. I shall stand by the head of his bed." Upon entering the house, she also ordered her attendants to stand at guard, both in front of and behind the residence. The treasurer lay upon his sickbed. A clerk was massaging his feet and informed him that his son and daughter-in-law had arrived. When he learned that Ghosaka was standing at his feet, he summoned the steward of his treasury and ordered him to recite the account of his wealth and revenues. Ready money amounts to 400 million coins. As for implements and articles of enjoyment, villages, fields, servants, cattle, ox carts, and horse carriages, altogether amounting to such and such. Having heard the inventory, the treasurer intended to say, "All this wealth I will not give to my son Ghosaka," but instead he uttered, "I give it." Ghosaka's wife, hearing this, reflected that if he were allowed to speak again, he might reverse himself. Therefore she pretended to be overwhelmed with grief, tore at her hair, and cried out, "Dear father, do you truly say so? Even so, how unfortunate we are to hear such words from you." Then, feigning extreme sorrow, she fell upon him, striking her head against his chest, and rolled her head upon his breast, so that he was unable to speak further. The treasurer died at that very moment. Word was sent to King Udena. After arranging the funeral rites, the king inquired concerning the treasurer's heirs, learning that he had a son named Ghosaka, and that all the wealth had been transferred to him. The king summoned him to court. Ghosaka entered the palace. The king, observing him through a window, saw that he leapt over puddles of water. The king then consoled him and appointed him treasurer of the city. Ghosaka expressed his gratitude and departed. The king again stood watching as he left the palace. This time, instead of leaping over the puddles, Ghosaka walked through them in a composed and orderly manner. Astonished, the king ordered him to be brought back and asked, "Ghosaka, is it true that when you came here, you leapt over the puddles, but when you returned, you walked through them with dignity?" "Yes, Your Majesty, it is so." "Why is that?" "Your Majesty, when I entered, I was still but a young man, given to playfulness. But now that Your Majesty has conferred rank upon me, I must put aside my former inclinations and conduct myself with propriety and dignity." Hearing this, the king was well pleased and confirmed him in the office at once. Thus, Ghosaka inherited his foster father's wealth together with the position of city treasurer and the 100 villages. Later, on one occasion, Ghosaka's wife revealed to the nurse Kaki how she had substituted the letter and thereby saved Ghosaka's life, which led to the honor he now enjoyed. At that time, Nurse Kaki confessed how Ghosaka had been plotted against 7 times by his foster father. When Ghosaka returned home, his wife recounted the whole story. He did not believe it and went to question the nurse himself. Hearing the full account, Ghosaka was deeply shaken and realized that only through great merit had he escaped those 7 dreadful deaths. From that time onward, he resolved not to live heedlessly, but to apply himself diligently with mindfulness. He gave alms daily 1,000 coins to the poor and the blind, and entrusted the former steward with the distribution. Part 3. The Youth of Sāmāvatī. In the city of Padavati, there lived a treasurer named Padavatiya, who was a friend of treasurer Ghosaka. They had never met in person, but had become friends through merchants traveling between the 2 cities who praised their respective age and wealth. From that time onward, they exchanged gifts. Later, a cholera epidemic broke out in the household of Padavatiya. First flies and insects died, then rats, poultry, pigs, cattle, male and female, servants, and finally, members of the family. Padavatiya, together with his wife and daughter, escaped death by breaking through a wall and fleeing. They made their way toward Kosambi, intending to seek out Ghosaka. Along the road, their provisions were exhausted, weakened by hunger and thirst. Exposed to sun and wind, they barely managed to reach Kosambi. After bathing in a pond and feeling somewhat refreshed, they rested at a lodging house near the city gate. The treasurer told his wife and daughter that his friend, the treasurer there, distributed 1,000 coins daily to the poor and the blind. He decided to remain there a few days and have his daughter go to the place of almsgiving to obtain food, regain their strength, and then go to meet his friend. Thus the wealthy maiden, stripped of all pride in her misfortune, suppressing her shame, took a bowl and joined the poor in seeking alms. When asked how many portions she required, on the first day, she requested 3 portions. On the second day, 2 portions. And on the third day, only 1 portion. On the first day, her father, persuaded and comforted by her mother, reluctantly ate the alms food, yet he could not digest it. Early the next morning, he passed away. The following day, her mother likewise departed, leaving her alone. Now alone, the young woman lay weeping and lamenting her misfortune and the uncertainty of worldly life. But as hunger gnawed at her entrails, she rose, and still weeping, joined the band of beggars to seek food. The steward Mitta remembered that the girl had received food for 3 consecutive days, and he reproached her playfully. "Shame, you wretched woman. So today you have finally learned how much your stomach can hold. Born into a noble household, gentle and timid by nature, she felt as though pierced by needles and rubbed with salt. Struggling to speak, she asked, 'Sir, what do you mean by that? The day before yesterday, you took 3 portions. Yesterday, 2, and today, only 1. So it seems that only today have you discovered how much your stomach can contain. Sir, those portions were not for myself. Then for what reason did you take them? The day before yesterday, there were 3 of us. Yesterday, there were 2. Now, there is only myself.' She then related the entire story from beginning to end. When Mitta heard it, he could not restrain his tears. Filled with compassion, he said to her, 'Dear child, formerly you were the daughter of Padavatiya. From this day onward, you are my daughter.' One day, she observed that the place where food was distributed was always noisy and disorderly. She suggested to her foster father that a passageway be constructed from the 2 gates leading to the place of distribution, with a fence enclosing it. People would enter through one gate, receive their food, and exit through the other, proceeding in an orderly manner. Thus everything would be calm and well arranged. Her foster father agreed and had it done. From that time, the girl whose name had been Sama came to be known as Sāmāvatī, she of the enclosure fence. Treasurer Ghosaka had long grown accustomed to the noise and bustle at the place where food was distributed, and he even took pleasure in regarding it as the lively activity of his own almsgiving hall. But on this day it was quiet. Surprised, he questioned the steward Mitta, and thus learned that the girl was the orphaned daughter of his friend Padavatiya. Ghosaka immediately took the girl into his household as an adopted daughter. On a festival day in the city, the daughters of noble families were permitted to go out to bathe in the river. When Sāmāvatī, the adopted daughter of Ghosaka, went to bathe, accompanied by 500 maidens, she passed by the royal palace and came into the sight of King Udena. The king ordered that she be brought into the palace. At first, Ghosaka did not comply, fearing reproach for treating his adopted daughter improperly. But when the king sealed his houses and Sāmāvatī herself consented, he obeyed the royal command. From that time onward, she became queen. Part 4. Udena and Vasudhadatta. King Udena also had another consort, Vasudhadatta, the daughter of King Kanda Pajoda of Ujjaini. The account is as follows. One day, returning from his pleasure garden, King Kanda Pajoda beheld his own radiant beauty and asked his courtiers, "Is there anyone whose splendor surpasses mine?" They replied, "King Udena of Kosambi surpasses your majesty many times over in splendor. Then capture him and bring him here as a prisoner." "It cannot be done, your majesty." "Why not?" "Because he knows the art of taming elephants. By reciting incantations and playing the lute, he can drive elephants away or draw them near at will. No one possesses as many elephants for riding as Udena, so he cannot be captured. If your majesty is determined, have a wooden elephant constructed and placed near King Udena's territory. Let sounds like the neighing of horses be made. The king will come out to see whether it is an elephant or a horse. When he draws near, he can be surrounded and seized, an excellent stratagem." The king ordered a mechanical elephant made of wood, carefully covered with cloth and painted so skillfully that it appeared real. It was placed by a lake near the land of his rival. Within the belly of the elephant were 60 men who moved about inside it. At intervals, they threw out shovelfuls of elephant dung. A woodcutter, seeing the elephant, reported it to King Udena. The king, accompanied by his retinue, followed the woodcutter to inspect the animal. Spies observed their movements and informed King Dhammapada, who dispatched a detachment of troops to approach Udena without his knowledge. Udena then played his lute and recited the incantations to subdue the elephant, but to no effect. The elephant, guided by the men hidden within, charged forward as if untouched by any charm. The king spurred his horse at full speed to keep pace with it, leaving his soldiers far behind. When he was alone, the forces of Dhammapada, lying in ambush on both sides, rushed out and captured him. Seeing their king fall into the enemy's hands, Udena's troops established a camp just outside the territory of Ujjaini and remained there. After capturing his foe alive and imprisoning him, King Dhammapada celebrated with feasting for 3 days. On the third day, lying in the darkness of his cell, Udena summoned the courage to ask the prison guard, "Good man, where is your king? He was drinking in merriment when he captured his enemy. Your king behaves no differently from a woman. Having captured me, he should either release me or put me to death. How can he disgrace me and then continue reveling in drink?" The jailer reported this, and the king came at once and questioned Udena. "Did you indeed say such and such?" "Yes, your majesty." "Very well, I shall release you if you agree to teach me the incantation." "I agree. But when you receive the incantation, will you pay homage to me?" "Pay homage to you?" "No, then I will not teach it to you. I shall have you executed. I do not fear that, for you are master only of my body, not of my mind." Hearing Udena's resolute reply, the king was perplexed and did not know how to obtain the spell. Suddenly he devised a stratagem and said, "You declared that you would reveal the incantation to anyone who pays homage to you, did you not?" "Yes, your majesty." "Very well. In my household, there is a hunchbacked woman. She shall sit behind a curtain and learn the incantation from you. Hunchbacked or lame, it matters not. If she pays homage to me, I will teach her the incantation." The king then went to Princess Vasudata. "My dear child, there is a leper who possesses a most powerful and precious incantation. Sit behind a curtain and learn it from him. You should study it, for I do not wish anyone else to know it. Later, you may teach it to me." The king invented the stories of a hunchback and a leper because he feared that the two might fall in love. One day, when they came to a certain verse of the incantation, Vasudata was unable to repeat it correctly, though Udena recited it again and again. Growing impatient, Udena exclaimed, "Foolish hunchback, thick-lipped, heavy-cheeked one, you deserve a few slaps." Vasudata, no less angered, replied, "Savage leper, what did you say? How dare you call me a hunchback?" Udena was astonished. He lifted the curtain and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Princess Vasudata. Your father told me you were a hunchback, and he told me you were a leper." Then both spoke at once. The king said so because he feared we would fall in love, and indeed, love arose between them. From that time forward, they ceased both teaching and learning. The king, unaware of this, would from time to time ask his daughter, "My child, are you studying your lesson?" The princess would calmly reply, "Yes, father." One day, Udena told his beloved that a husband can accomplish what neither father nor mother, nor brother nor sister can accomplish, and that if she were able to free him, she would be granted 500 attendants and be made chief queen. The princess agreed and went to her father to request that the gates be opened and that she be given an elephant to ride, saying that she needed to go out at night, guided by the constellations, to seek a certain medicinal herb used in incantations. The king consented and allowed them to go whenever they wished. At that time, the Kishing possessed 5 swift means of conveyance: a she-elephant named Bhadavati that could travel 50 leagues in a day, a slave named Kaka who could travel 60 leagues in a day, 2 mares, Selakanthi and Munjakesi, that could travel 100 leagues in a day, and an elephant named Nalagiri that could travel 120 leagues in a day. Story of the past, how Kandapajota obtained the 5 conveyances. It is said that before the present, Buddha arose in the world. The king had once been a slave to a householder. On one occasion, the householder went outside the city to bathe. As he was returning, he encountered a Pacheka Buddha who had gone into the city for alms and was coming out again, his bowl shining as if freshly polished. The householder asked, "Venerable sir, have you received anything? I have gone my round and am now leaving the city." "Friend?" He did not want to answer the question directly, but spoke of what was not asked. Yet the meaning was clear that he had received no food. Seeing that the bowl was empty, the householder requested the Pacheka Buddha to wait a moment and hurried home. At that time, the evil influence of Mara spread throughout the city. Mara himself, assuming a disguise, approached and asked why the Blessed One had received no alms and urged him to return. But the Pacheka Buddha, knowing that Mara would again stir up the townspeople to mock and harass him, resolved not to go back. Finding food prepared at home, the householder quickly instructed his servant to run with all speed to the Blessed One and bring back the bowl. When the bowl was brought, the householder filled it with food and then ordered the servant to hasten and return it to the Pacheka Buddha, promising to share with him the merit of this offering. The servant went and returned swiftly as an arrow, presenting the bowl. He said, "Venerable sir, in a short time I have gone and returned with utmost speed. Through the merit of this swiftness, may I obtain 5 means of conveyance, capable of traveling 50, 60, 100, and 120 leagues in a single day. As I went and returned, my body was scorched by the rays of the sun. Through the merit of this deed, may I, wherever I am reborn, possess power like the strength of the sun's rays. My master has shared with me the merit of this offering. Through that merit, may I partake in the Dhamma realized by the Blessed One." The Pacheka Buddha assented, "So shall it be," and he uttered verses of blessing. May all the donor's wishes be fulfilled in every way. May all the donor's wishes be complete like the full moon. May all the donor's wishes be fulfilled in every way. May all the donor's wishes shine forth like the radiant jewel. Such was the deed of Kandapajota in a former life, and through that merit, he later possessed the 5 swift conveyances. One day, while King Kandapajota was strolling in the royal garden, Udena made his escape. He filled large leather bags with gold and silver coins, placed them upon the back of the she-elephant, helped Vasudata onto the saddle, and they set out. The guards saw them and quickly informed the king. Kandapajota immediately dispatched troops in pursuit. Udena then opened a bag of gold and scattered the coins along the road. The pursuing soldiers halted to gather the gold before continuing the chase. He next opened a bag of silver and scattered the coins. Again, the pursuers stopped to collect the silver, delaying their pursuit. Thus, Udena reached the camp established outside the city. His soldiers, seeing him, greeted him with great rejoicing and escorted him safely back to Kosambi. Thereafter, he celebrated the wedding and installed Vasudata as his secondary queen. Part 5. The Buddha's refusal of Magandiya. Another consort of King Udena was Magandiya, formerly the daughter of a Brahmin named Magandiya, who lived in the country of the Kurus. Her mother, as well as her father's younger brother, was also named Magandiya. The girl was as beautiful as a celestial nymph. The Brahmin, being exceedingly fastidious, found no suitor worthy of her hand. not even the most noble youths of the land, who came to seek her in marriage. One day, in the early morning, the blessed teacher surveyed the world and perceived that the Brahmin Magandiya and his wife possessed the supporting conditions to attain the fruit of non-returning anagami. Having donned his robe and taken his alms bowl, he went to the outskirts of the town where the Brahmin was performing a fire sacrifice. The Brahmin beheld the body of the Tathagata, perfect in every feature, and thought to himself, "There is no one in the world who can compare with this man. I shall give him my daughter to attend upon him." He addressed the Blessed One, "Venerable monk, I have but one daughter, and I have not found anyone worthy of her, except you. You should have a wife, and she should have a husband. I will give her to you. Remain here until I return." The Blessed One stood in silence, uttering not a word. The Brahmin hurried home and joyfully told his wife, "Come quickly, I have found one worthy of our daughter. Dress her in her finest garments." He then led his wife and daughter to where the Blessed One stood. The entire city was stirred with excitement. For so long, this old man has disparaged every suitor who sought his daughter's hand. Yet today, it is said he has found someone truly his equal. I wonder what sort of man he has approved. Thus the townspeople followed him, eager to see the fortunate suitor. Meanwhile, instead of remaining where he had been asked to wait, the Blessed One departed, leaving behind only a footprint. A footprint of the Buddha appears only where he has stepped, and nowhere else. Only those possessing sufficient merit are able to see it, even if wild elephants or beasts tread upon it, or though rainstorms rage and fierce winds blow. The footprint of the Buddha cannot be effaced. Arriving at the place, the Brahmin was astonished not to find the Blessed One. Looking about, he eventually noticed the footprint. The Brahmin's wife had mastered the 3 Vedas, including the verses pertaining to physiognomy. She murmured to herself as she carefully examined the markings of the footprint before her. At length, she concluded, "Husband, this is not the footprint of one who pursues the 5 sensual pleasures." Then she recited a verse, "The footprint of the sensual is shallow, of the evil one it sinks deeply in the road. The fool's mark is uneven and confused. This is the footprint of one free from craving." The Brahmin did not believe his wife and jestingly rebuked her. "What an imagination! You always see crocodiles in a water jar and thieves hiding in the house. Be silent." The wife persisted firmly. "You may say what you wish, but this is not the footprint of one who pursues the 5 sensual pleasures." The Brahmin continued searching here and there. Suddenly he saw the Blessed One and cried out joyfully, "There he is!" Approaching, he addressed the Buddha, "Venerable monk, I give you my daughter to attend upon you." Instead of replying with acceptance or refusal, the Blessed One said, "Brahmin, I have something to tell you." The Brahmin listened as the Blessed One related how Mara had pursued him from the time of his renunciation until he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. At last, Mara himself sat beneath that tree, dejected and sorrowful, seeing that his power could not prevail against the Buddha. Then Mara's daughters came to console their father. They transformed themselves into young maidens and mature women in an attempt to seduce the Blessed One. At that time, the Blessed One declared, "Having seen craving, sorrow, and sensual delight as they are, how could I take pleasure in the happiness of passion? This body is filled with urine and excrement. I would not touch it even with my foot." When the Blessed One concluded the verse, the Brahmin and his wife attained the fruit of non-returning anagami. As for Magandiya, she reflected within herself, "If this man has no need of me, that may be so, but to say that one is filled with urine and filth, this is too much. Very well, with my lineage, social standing, wealth, and the allure of youth, I shall surely obtain a husband worthy of me, and then I shall know what to do with the ascetic Gautama." From that time onward, she harbored resentment toward the Blessed One. The Buddha knew that she bore hatred toward him. Nevertheless, he spoke the verse for the benefit of her parents, that they might attain the noble fruit, and did not concern himself with the hostility directed at him. Her parents entrusted her to her uncle, Kulamagandiya. Knowing that his niece was fit to be the wife of a king, he adorned her with every ornament and brought her to Kosambi to present her to King Udena. The king was pleased and installed her as a secondary queen, granting her 500 attendants. Thus King Udena had 3 queens, attended by a total of 1,500 maidens. Part 6. The Death of Sāmāvatī and Magandiya, the treasurers, the monks, and the tree deity. In Kosambi, there were 3 treasurers, Ghosaka, Kukuta, and Pavariya. When the rainy season approached, 500 ascetics descended from the Himalayas to the city for alms. The 3 treasurers, rejoicing, provided them with seats and offered food. Moreover, they offered lodging in their own homes for the 4 months of the rain's retreat, and the ascetics consented to remain. Thereafter, each year, after spending 8 months in the Himalayas, the ascetics would dwell for the 4 rainy months with the 3 treasurers. On one occasion, as they returned from the Himalayas to the city, the ascetics rested beneath a great banyan tree in a secluded forest. The eldest among them merely thought of requesting drinking water from the tree. Deity, surely a powerful great deva, and immediately water appeared. When he thought of food, food appeared. When he wished to see the tree deity, he saw him. The deity emerged from the trunk of the tree. The ascetics approached him and asked how he had attained such great supernatural power. The deity, modest and considering his own merit insignificant, did not wish to speak, but being repeatedly urged, he related his past deed, the deed of the tree deity. In a former life, the tree deity had been a poor man who earned his living by working for the householder Anathapindika Kap Kodok. On a day of observance, Uposatha, when Anathapindika returned home from the monastery, he asked whether the servants had informed this worker that it was a fasting day. They had not. He therefore ordered that a meal be prepared for the man in the evening. But when the food was served, the man refused to eat, though he had labored strenuously in the forest. All day he abstained, because he had learned that it was a day of observance. That evening was unusually quiet. On other evenings, there would be loud cries, "Give me rice, give me soup, curry." But now, all were observing the precepts and did not eat afternoon. Even infants carried in arms. After rinsing their mouths, they took only 4 lozenges. A fragrant oil lamp illuminated the room, and young and old alike recited the 32 parts of the body. Since he had only learned of the observance late in the day and began fasting that evening, he gained only half the merit of the observance. As night fell, he began to suffer from intense hunger. He tied a cord tightly around his body and grasped the end of it, tightening it further to endure the pain. The householder, hearing of this, took a torch and went to him, offering him 4 lozenges. Yet he refused to eat, unwilling to forfeit even the half merit of the observance. He steadfastly maintained the precepts until sunrise. Then, like a withered garland, he passed away and was reborn in that banyan tree as a tree deity. Conclusion: the treasurers, the ascetics, and the tree deity. The tree deity concluded. The householder made offerings to the Buddha, offerings to the Dhamma, and offerings to the Sangha. Through him, I obtained the merit of half a day's observance, and by that merit, I have gained this great supernatural power. When the 500 ascetics heard the name Buddha, they rose to their feet, stretched forth their arms in reverence, and implored the tree deity to pronounce the word Buddha. They requested him to declare his faith by repeating 3 times, Buddha. After he had done so, they solemnly declared, "It is exceedingly difficult to hear this name in the world." And they concluded, "Divine Being, you have enabled us to hear a sound which for hundreds of thousands of eons we have never heard." The disciples then expressed to their teacher their wish to go and see the Blessed One. All agreed that on the following day, after receiving alms from the 3 treasurers and informing them of their intention, they would set out. The 3 treasurers, having offered seats and served thick gruel in their homes, learned that the ascetics intended to depart immediately. They were astonished and asked, "Venerable sirs, did you not promise to remain with us for the 4 months of the rains? Where do you now intend to go? The Buddha has arisen in the world. The Dhamma has arisen. The Sangha has arisen. Therefore, we go to meet the Blessed Teacher. But are only you worthy to go to the Blessed Teacher? We forbid no one. Friend, then we too shall go." As preparations were required, the 3 treasurers allowed the band of ascetics to depart first. They went to the Blessed One, praised him, paid homage, and respectfully sat down to one side. The Blessed One expounded the Dhamma to them in due order. At the conclusion of the discourse, all of them attained arahantship together with the various supernormal powers. They then requested admission into the Sangha. The Blessed One said, "Come, monks." Immediately they became monks, fully ordained, with robes and bowls, created through psychic power. As for the 3 treasurers, they prepared offerings, robes, bedding, ghee, honey, and other requisites, loading 500 carts with each kind of gift, and set out for Sāmāvatī. Meeting the Blessed One, they paid homage, listened to the Dhamma, and at the end of the discourse, attained the fruit of stream entry Sotapanna. They remained with the Blessed One for 2 weeks, making offerings and inviting him to Kosambi. Upon returning home, Treasurer Ghosaka built the Ghosaka Monastery, Kukuta built the Kukutarama Monastery, and Pavariya constructed the Pavarikarama Monastery. When these were completed, they invited the Blessed One to come. In turn, each treasurer served the Blessed One for 1 day at his respective monastery and offered him alms there. All 3 treasurers had a servant named Sumana who tended the gardens and had long served them. He requested permission to offer alms to the Blessed One and was granted the following day for his offering. Kujutara transformed Sāmāvatī. Sumana the gardener regularly sold flowers to Kujuttara, the maidservant of Queen Sāmāvatī. But on that day, he did not cut flowers for delivery to the palace. Instead, he set them aside to offer to the Blessed One, for he had invited the Buddha to his home for alms. Besides apologizing to Kujuttara, he said, "Please wait until I have served the Blessed One and listened to the Dhamma. After that, you may take all the remaining flowers." She agreed. When the Blessed One arrived at the head of the Sangha, Sumana received his bowl, and the Buddha dedicated the merit to him. Hearing those words, Kujuttara attained the fruit of stream entry, Sotapanna. Until then, from the 8 coins that King Udena allotted daily for Queen Sāmāvatī to purchase flowers, Kujuttara would secretly keep 4 coins for herself and buy flowers with only 4. But that day, the number of flowers was twice the usual amount. The queen, astonished, inquired and learned the whole story, including how Kujuttara had listened to the discourse of the fully enlightened one instead of becoming angry or reproaching her maid and demanding the return of the money she had withheld. The queen was filled with joy and desired to drink from that deathless Dhamma. Before repeating the discourse of the Tathagata, Kujuttara was bathed by the queen with 16 pitchers of fragrant water, dressed in fine garments from underclothes to outer robe, and given a prepared seat, seated upon a raised seat, holding a fan adorned with painted designs. She expounded the Dhamma to the 500 ladies of the court, exactly as the Blessed One had taught it. After hearing the discourse, they rejoiced and said to her, "Friend, from this day forward, do not commit unwholesome deeds. Be to us both mother and teacher. Go to the Blessed One, learn thoroughly all the Dhamma he has taught, and return to recite it to us." She carried out the instructions with utmost fidelity, so thoroughly that she later memorized the entire Tipitaka, and the Blessed One himself confirmed that among the laywomen, the one who had learned the sacred scriptures by heart and was foremost in expounding the Dhamma was Kujutra. 500 palace maidens, after listening to the Dhamma discourses delivered by Kujutra, were filled with joy and wished to behold the Blessed One. However, bound by the regulations of the inner palace, they were not free to go outside. Therefore, Kujutra told them to bore holes in the wall and prepare flowers and incense. When the Blessed One came to the gate of the house of the 3 treasurers, each of them, from within her chamber, would look through the hole in the wall to see him, pay homage, and offer praise. Magandia's plot against Sāmāvatī and the Buddha. One day, Magandia left the palace and walked to the quarters of the palace maidens. She was astonished to see the holes in the wall, and upon inquiry, learned that the maidens had made them in order to behold and venerate the Buddha. Desiring to harm Sāmāvatī and the Buddha, she reported to King Udena that Sāmāvatī and her attendant maidens would betray him and, within a few days, would take his life. But the king did not believe her. Though she repeatedly whispered her accusations into his ear, he remained unconvinced. She then invited the king to Sāmāvatī's quarters and pointed out the holes in the wall. The king asked the reason, and when he understood, he said nothing. Instead, he ordered that all the holes be sealed and that windows be constructed with an opening at the top in every chamber. It is said that this type of upper vented window originated from that time. Failing to defame Sāmāvatī and the palace maidens, Magandia turned to finding a way to insult the Blessed One. She incited ruffians to follow the Buddha and revile and abuse him with harsh words. "You are a thief, a fool, a madman, a camel, a bull, a donkey, a denizen of hell, a beast. You have no hope of liberation. Punishments will befall you." Venerable Ananda, hearing such grievous abuse, could not endure it, and addressed the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, the people here revile and insult us. Let us go elsewhere." "Where shall we go?" "Ananda, to another city, Venerable Sir." "If there also they revile us, where shall we go then?" "Ananda, we shall go elsewhere again, Venerable Sir. And if there too they revile us, what then?" "We shall go on to yet another place, Venerable Sir." "Ananda, do not speak thus. Wherever there is difficulty, it must be resolved there. Only when it has been settled may one depart for another place. But who reviles you?" "Ananda, Venerable Sir, everyone reviles us, the ruffians and the townsfolk alike." "Ananda, I am like an elephant advancing into battle. The duty of an elephant in battle is to endure arrows shot from all directions. Even so, it is my duty to endure abusive speech." Then the Buddha proclaimed concerning himself 3 verses in the chapter on the elephant. "As an elephant in battle endures the arrows that fall, so shall I endure abuse. For many people are of evil conduct. The trained elephant is led into the crowd. The trained horse is ridden by the king. The well-trained man is supreme. He who endures abuse, excellent, are well-trained mules and thoroughbred sind horses, noble tusked elephants. But better still is the self-controlled. The discourse brought benefit to those who were then gathered around. Thereafter, the Buddha advised Ananda, "Ananda, Do not be troubled. These people will revile you only for 7 days. On the 8th day, they will be silent. Difficulties that come to a Buddha do not last beyond 7 days. Though Magandia failed in her plot to drive the Buddha from the city, she did not retreat. She devised a plan to harm the palace maidens who were devoted to the Buddha. She instructed her uncle, the royal chaplain, to bring 8 live chickens and 8 dead chickens into the palace. While the king was drinking wine with her, her uncle entered the palace, but upon reaching the highest step, stood there, unwilling to enter the royal drinking chamber. Magandia then ordered a page to take the 8 live chickens and present them to the king, urging him to command the maidens of Sāmāvatī to prepare them and serve them to him. The king consented. The page went as ordered and returned with the maiden's reply, "We do not take the life of living beings." Magandia continued to flatter the king, "Your Majesty, if you wish to know whether they truly refrain from killing living beings, please command them to cook the food and send it to the ascetic Gautama." The king followed her advice and again sent the page to the maidens, but this time, before delivering the royal command, the uncle brought the 8 live chickens to the royal chaplain to exchange them for 8 dead chickens, and only then conveyed the king's order to the maidens. The king commands that these chickens be cooked and offered to the Blessed One. This time they accepted. "Certainly, this is our duty." The page returned and reported accordingly. Magandia did not miss the opportunity to slander them before the king. "Your Majesty, do you see? They do not act according to your wishes, but turn instead toward another." Yet the king remained silent and forgave them. Magandia, angered but unable to act further, swallowed her resentment and waited for another occasion. The king had the custom of spending 7 days with each queen, knowing that on the following day, the king would go to Sāmāvatī's palace. Magandia sent word to her uncle to provide her with a snake whose fangs had been smeared with poison. Wherever King Udena went, he carried with him a lute used for charming elephants by incantation. There was a small hole in its case, and she placed the snake inside it, sealing the opening with a bouquet of flowers. As the king was about to go to Sāmāvatī's palace, she spoke of an ominous dream and tried to dissuade him from going. The king would not listen. She then insisted on accompanying him. Though he was not entirely agreeable, Sāmāvatī and her attendant and maidens, having bathed, anointed themselves with perfumes, adorned themselves with flowers and ornaments, received the king. After eating and drinking together in intimacy, he lay down upon the couch, placing the lute beside his pillow. Magandia pretended to walk back and forth. Seizing a moment when no one was watching, she quietly removed the bouquet from the lute. The snake, which had been kept unfed for several days, immediately slid out through the opening, raised its hood, hissed, and coiled itself upon the head of the bed. Feigning sudden alarm at the sight of the snake, Magandia cried out in terror, "Oh, Your Majesty, the snake!" Then she lamented and reproached him. "This foolish and ill-fated king would not heed my words. These wretches are truly shameless. They behave as they have received no favor from the king, yet they seek his death, so that they may live in comfort. But as long as the king lives, they will continue to struggle. Your Majesty, I warned you of the evil dream and urged you not to go to Sāmāvatī's palace, yet you would not listen." Seeing the snake, the king was terrified. His fury blazed up, and he roared, "They have dared to commit such a monstrous deed. This is a grievous crime." I did not heed Magandia when she spoke of their misconduct, how they bored holes in the walls to sit and gaze through them, how when I ordered them to cook the chickens for me, they sent them back. And now, today, they have placed a snake upon my bed. Meanwhile, Sāmāvatī earnestly admonished her 500 maidens, "My friends, we have no other refuge. Let us sincerely love the king and the queen as ourselves. Be not angry with anyone." Then the king ordered his bow to be brought, a gigantic bow, which 1,000 men were required to carry. He made Sāmāvatī stand in front, and all the maidens stood behind her. He aimed directly at Sāmāvatī's breast, but through the spiritual power arising from her loving kindness, the arrow turned back along the path by which it had come and aimed itself at the king's own heart. The king thought to himself, "This arrow can pierce even a solid rock, and nothing in heaven or earth could cause it to turn back. Yet now it has turned upon encountering Sāmāvatī, though it is without consciousness and life. It knows that Sāmāvatī is virtuous and pure, yet I, a king and a living man, did not know this." He cast aside the bow, knelt before Sāmāvatī with outstretched hands, and reverently uttered this verse: "I am utterly bewildered and distressed. The 4 quarters are overturned within my heart. O Sāmāvatī, grant me protection. Be my refuge." Sāmāvatī, a disciple of the fully enlightened one, replied with this verse: "Seek not refuge in me. Seek refuge in the Buddha, the Supreme One. It is he in whom my heart takes refuge. O great King, take refuge in the King of Dhamma. As for me, I shall take refuge in you with single-hearted devotion." But the king's fear continued to increase, and he repeated his verse, seeking refuge in Sāmāvatī. She firmly refused. At last, the king consented. "Then I shall take refuge in you and in the blessed teacher. I will grant you a boon." She rejoiced. "I accept." The king went to the Buddha, took refuge, and invited the Blessed One to accept abundant offerings for 7 days. Then, turning to Sāmāvatī, he said, "Rise and choose whatever you desire, Your Majesty. I have no need of gold or silver, but we ask this special favor. Please arrange that the Blessed One may come here each day with 500 bhikkhus, so that we may listen to the Dhamma." The king again paid homage to the Buddha and invited the Blessed One together with 500 bhikkhus. Since the Buddha could not remain continually in one place, while many other places required his presence, he sent the Venerable Ananda to the royal palace each day. On that day, as usual, they offered food and listened to the Venerable Elder's discourse. Filled with joy and serenity, they presented to the Venerable Ananda 500 yellow robes, which they were wearing upon their shoulders, each robe valued at 500 coins. When the king noticed that they were no longer wearing the yellow robes, and inquired, learning that they had offered them as alms, he went to the Venerable Ananda and asked, "Venerable Sir, what will you do with so many robes?" "I shall keep only as many as are needed. The remainder I will give to those whose robes are worn out." "And what will those monks do with their worn-out robes?" "They will make use of them." "In what way will they use those tattered robes?" "They will make them into bedspreads." "And what of the old bedspreads?" "They will be made into floor mats." "And the old floor mats?" "They will be made into foot cloths." "And the worn-out foot cloths?" "They will be cut into small pieces and mixed with clay to plaster the walls." Thus, Venerable Sir, even though all the robes are offered to you, none is wasted. "That is entirely so, Your Majesty." The king was so pleased that he ordered another 500 robes to be laid at the elder's feet. It is said that the Venerable Ananda received 1,000 robes valued at 500 coins, as many as 100,000 times. 1,000 robes valued at 1,000 coins, 1,000 times. And 1,000 robes valued at 1,000 coins, 100 times. As for smaller numbers of robes, from 1, 2, up to 10, he received them beyond counting. When the Blessed One attained Parinibbana, the Venerable Ananda traveled throughout Jambudvipa and distributed his own robes and alms bowls to the bhikkhus dwelling in the monasteries, the burning of Sāmāvatī, and the punishment of Magandiya. Magandiya saw that every scheme she devised resulted in consequences contrary to her expectations. This time she put into effect another plan. She ordered her uncle to go to Sāmāvati's palace, open the storeroom, take cloth soaked in oil, and wrap it around the pillars of the house. He gathered all the maidens into the building, shut the doors without waiting for anyone, set fire with a torch, and then climbed down and departed. Seeing her uncle winding oil-soaked cloth around the pillars, Sāmāvatī inquired in astonishment and was told it was to secure the pillars. Then he forced them into the chamber and set it ablaze. As the flames spread swiftly, Sāmāvatī admonished her attendants. Even with the Buddha's wisdom, it would be difficult to determine how many times in the beginningless round of samsara our bodies have been burned. Therefore, be mindful. While the fire raged and spread rapidly, Sāmāvatī and the palace maidens devoted themselves to meditation on the subject of pain, and they attained the noble fruits. When the Blessed One heard the bhikkhus relating the account of Sāmāvatī and the 500 palace maidens who had lost their lives, and in order to answer the question concerning their destiny in the next existence, he declared that some had attained the fruit of stream entry, some the fruit of once returning, and some the fruit of non-returning, according to the merit of their past deeds. And he uttered this verse, bound by the fetters of ignorance and delusion, seeing the world as fair and enduring, through ignorance conditioned and ensnared, the fool regards the world as lasting, but the wise, hearing and seeing rightly, know that nothing escapes, arising and passing away. Then the Buddha delivered this discourse: Bhikkhus, in the round of samsara, beings are not always one-pointed and steadfast in mindfulness. At times, they have committed unwholesome deeds. Therefore, they experience both happiness and suffering. At that time, the king was in his pleasure garden. Hearing the cries that Sāmāvati's palace was burning, he hastened there, but all had already been reduced to ashes. He sat down upon the steps, surrounded by his courtiers, deeply grieving for Sāmāvatī. As he recalled her virtues, he wondered who could have caused such a calamity, and immediately suspected Magandiya, desiring to probe her. By stratagem, he said to his attendants, "So be it. Now I am freed from distraction and anxiety. Sāmāvatī was ever seeking occasion to kill me, causing me fear and suspicion. But now my mind shall be at peace, and I may sleep in tranquility." Who has done this? Your Majesty. The one who truly loves me most has done it. Magandiya, who happened to be standing nearby and heard these words, proudly stepped forward and confessed that she, together with her uncle, was the perpetrator. The king remained composed and declared that no one truly loved him as she did, and that he would grant her and her kinsfolk a favor. She sent messages summoning her relatives from near and far to the royal palace. Even those not related, hearing of the matter, bribed their way in so as to be counted among her kin. When they had assembled, the king ordered that pits be dug to the depth of a man's waist. They were placed inside. Straw was heaped upon them, and the straw was set alight. When the flames had scorched their flesh until it crackled, the king ordered iron plows to be drawn over their bodies, crushing and breaking them apart. As for Magandiya, the king commanded that the firm parts of her flesh be sliced off with sharp knives, cut into pieces, placed in a vessel of oil over burning coals, fried like cakes, and forced upon her to eat. In the hall of Dhamma, the Blessed One heard the bhikkhus discussing and wondering about the death of Sāmāvatī and the 500 palace maidens. Thereupon he related a story of the past, Sāmāvati's conspiracy to burn a Pacceka Buddha. Long ago, when King Brahmadatta was reigning in Varanasi, 8 Pacceka Buddhas regularly received alms in the royal palace, attended by 100 palace maidens. 7 of them returned to the Himalayas, but one remained seated in meditation on a river bank amid tangled grass. On one occasion, the palace maidens accompanied the king to bathe and amuse themselves. After spending the day playing in the water, they came ashore shivering from the cold, seeking a place to kindle a fire to warm themselves. They saw a clump of grass and, without looking carefully, set it alight and gathered around it. When the grass burned down and collapsed, they discovered the Pacceka Buddha. Terrified and uncertain what to do, and fearing that the king would discover the matter and punish them, they resolved to conceal the deed. They brought firewood from every direction, built a large funeral pyre, poured oil upon it, and set it ablaze. Then they departed. Their first act had been unintentional, but afterward they committed a grave offense through deliberate calculation, and thus they experienced painful consequences. As for the Pacceka Buddha, absorbed in meditation, even if 100,000 cartloads of wood and oil had been burned upon him, he would not have felt heat. Therefore, on the 7th day, he emerged from meditation and departed to wherever he wished. Those palace maidens not only were tormented in hell for many hundreds of thousands of years, but their houses were also burned, and they themselves perished by fire in their own homes for 100 successive lives. When the Blessed One had finished relating the story, the bhikkhus continued to inquire, "But, Venerable Sir, why did Kujutra become hunchbacked? Why was she so intelligent? Why did she attain the fruit of stream entry? And why was she born as a maidservant?" The Blessed One continued, "A story of the past. The former deeds of Kujuttara, bhikkhus. In the same reign of King Brahmadatta, who ruled in Varanasi, there was once a Pacceka Buddha who was slightly hunchbacked. A maidservant, seeing him, wrapped a blanket over her shoulder, held a golden vessel in her arms, bent her back like a hunchback, and walked slowly, saying, 'This is how the Pacceka Buddha walks.' Because she mocked his manner of walking, she became hunchbacked. However, on a certain day, she offered the Pacceka Buddha seats in the royal palace and filled their alms bowls with thick gruel as an offering. The Pacceka Buddhas accepted it, but as the gruel was very hot, they had to pass the bowls from one hand to the other. Seeing this, she offered 8 ivory bangles to place beneath the bowls. When the Pacceka Buddhas looked at her, she said, "Venerable sirs, we no longer use these bangles. Please accept them as a gift from us before you depart." The Pacceka Buddhas took these bangles to the Nandamula cave, where they remain to this day. Through the merit of that deed, she came to memorize the Tipitaka and possessed profound wisdom, and through that same merit, she attained the fruit of stream entry. This was her deed in the period between 2 Buddhas. In the time of the Buddha Kassapa, there was the daughter of a treasurer in Varanasi. One evening, as twilight fell, she took a mirror and adorned herself. A bhikkhuni, her close friend, one who had abandoned sensual desire, came to visit her. It was customary for bhikkhunis who had renounced sensual pleasures to visit their lay supporters in the late afternoon. At that time, her attendants were absent, so she told the bhikkhuni to fetch her cosmetic basket. If the bhikkhuni refused, she might become angry and thereby be reborn in hell. But if she complied with the request, she would be reborn as a servant in a future life. Being reborn as a servant is not as painful as being reborn in hell. Therefore, the bhikkhuni took the cosmetic basket and handed it to her. Because of this, she became a maidservant. On another occasion, the bhikkhus were discussing in the hall of Dhamma, Sāmāvatī, and the 500 palace maidens were burned in their own house. Magandhya and her kinsfolk were burned by blazing straw and crushed by iron plows. Magandhya herself was cooked into boiling oil. In such a case, who lived and who died? The Blessed One, hearing this, replied, Bhikkhus, those who are heedless and negligent, though they live 100 years, are as if dead. Those who dwell attentive and mindful, whether living or dying, are truly alive. Bhikkhus, one who is mindful and vigilant, never truly dies. Then the Blessed One recited Dhammapada verse 21, Heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful do not die. The heedless are as if already dead. Verse 22. Understanding clearly this distinction, the wise delight in heedfulness, rejoicing in heedfulness. They find joy in the domain of the noble ones. And verse 23, those who are ever devoted to meditation, steadfast and firmly resolute, the wise attain nibbana, the unsurpassed security from bondage. Thus, bringing today's accounts to a close, we see that heedlessness is the path leading to suffering, while mindfulness and clear awareness are the very foundation of peace and well-being. A human life passes swiftly, yet each moment of wakeful awareness determines the course of the future. May each of us cherish the present, live without heedlessness, and sow wholesome seeds for this life and for lives to come. Thank you for accompanying me today